Chapter 1. Hamilton, the Founding Father. Imagine surviving a hurricane so terrifying that instead of hiding indoors like a normal person, you run outside just to watch it. Most people who just witnessed a giant storm typically don't have the urge to go sightseeing. But you? Yeah, you stare directly into it, and later write such a beautiful description that the rich people on your island suddenly realize, hey, this kid might actually be a genius. Just like that, your entire life changes. Donations pour in, a ship is arranged, and before you know it, you're leaving the Caribbean behind for New York. Not because you're rich, not because you're important, but because your words are simply that good. You throw yourself into school, but Britain has a funny habit of making everyone angry. Taxes keep rising, soldiers keep marching around, and people are getting very tired of being told what they can and can't do. Pretty soon, books are replaced with muskets. Congratulations, you successfully enrolled in the revolution. You prove you're not just smart, you're fearless. During battle, cannonballs are flying everywhere, yet somehow you're still giving orders like this is just another Tuesday. General George Washington notices you almost immediately. Before long, you're serving as one of his closest aides. It's an incredible opportunity, unless you actually enjoy fighting, because now your job mostly involves writing letters while everyone else gets the exciting stories. Imagine being one of the smartest men in America and spending half your day arguing over paperwork. Eventually, you've had enough. You practically beg Washington for a battlefield command. At first, he refuses, then finally gives in. At the Battle of Yorktown, you lead a daring assault that helps trap the British and brings the Revolutionary War to its dramatic conclusion. America is finally free. Somehow, against all odds, it actually worked. As the new nation struggles to stand on its own, you become one of the loudest voices arguing that the country needs a stronger government. Without one, you think the whole thing would fall apart before it even gets started. Your ideas help shape the United States Constitution, and soon you're appointed as America's very first Secretary of the Treasury. You build a national bank, organize the country's finances, and somehow convince people that numbers on paper can hold a nation together. It's not exactly sword fighting, but as it turns out, balanced budgets can change history too. Then comes a visitor from across the Atlantic. He's young, charming, unbelievably idealistic, and already famous for helping America win its independence. His name is Marquis de Lafayette, and the two of you quickly become close friends. You fought for liberty together, dreamt about freedom together, and now he tells you about the growing unrest back home in France. You have no idea that your friend is about to walk straight into one of the bloodiest revolutions in history. Chapter 2. The man eager for a revolution. When the American Civil War ends, Hamilton stays behind to build a new nation. You return home believing France might follow America's example. That turns out to be widely optimistic. France is collapsing under debt. Bread is expensive, people are starving, everyone is angry at everyone else. You believe the answer is reform, a constitutional monarchy, more rights, more freedom, and less chopping people's heads off. Unfortunately, a revolution isn't something you can actually moderate. At first, crowds cheer your name. Then they start blaming you for everything. One side thinks you're too loyal to the king. The other thinks you've betrayed the revolution. Congratulations, you've somehow managed to upset absolutely everyone. That's actually harder than it sounds. Violence spreads across France. Executions become daily entertainment. The revolution you hoped would bring liberty begins feeding itself instead. Realizing you're now in serious danger, you flee the country. Bad plan. Austrian soldiers capture you before you get very far. Instead of freedom, you spend years locked away in prison, while Europe tears itself apart outside your window. Eventually, you're released and returned to a France that barely resembles the one you left. The revolution has burned through kings, politicians, and generals at an alarming rate. Out of the chaos rises a young military commander who keeps winning battles nobody thinks he should. He's somehow risen to being the sole powerhouse in France. Interestingly enough, he's also the man who secured your release from prison. His name is Napoleon Bonaparte. You meet him at his brother's chateau during a celebration and get a chance to thank him in person. And although you admire his talent, something doesn't sit right with you. You spent your life fighting for liberty. He seems far more interested in power. History is about to find out which vision of France wins. Chapter 3. The Conqueror. It's very clear that this Lafayette fellow is a bit too interested in this democracy of a thing. Maybe it was a mistake setting him free from prison. That's not a problem anyway, because a few years later, after becoming first consul, you crown yourself emperor. Yes, you literally place the crown on your own head. The Pope is standing right there and probably wondering why he even made the trip in the first place. Soon, almost every major power in Europe is trying to stop you. One by one, they fail. Your armies march across the continent so quickly that kings begin losing sleep whenever they hear your name. But for all your love of war, you also admire brilliance in other forms. Great commanders impress you, but so do great thinkers. In 1808, while attending the Congress of Erfurt, you asked to meet Germany's most celebrated writer, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. When the two of you finally meet, you don't discuss battle plans or politics. Instead, you talk about literature, theater, and human nature. After the conversation, you tell Goethe, "You are a man." It sounds strangely simple today, but coming from the man who had conquered much of Europe, it was considered an enormous praise. The meeting becomes one of the most famous encounters between political power and artistic genius in history. As your armies continue marching across Europe, Goethe returns home carrying a conversation he will never forget. Chapter 4. The Writer. You've just finished an unforgettable conversation with Napoleon Bonaparte. The most powerful man in Europe spent his time discussing literature with you instead of military strategy. Not a bad afternoon, if you ask me. By 1808, you're already one of Germany's greatest writers. You could easily spend the rest of your life enjoying your reputation, but your curiosity refuses to retire. While everyone else sees you as a poet, you're busy studying plants, light, anatomy, and the strange ways humans see color. Basically anything at this point. Apparently, mastering literature wasn't enough. Years pass quietly in Weimar. Empires rise and fall outside your window, but your home becomes a gathering place for young artists, scientists, and philosophers hoping to learn from you. One visitor especially catches your attention. A brilliant young philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer arrives to discuss your theory of color. The two of you spend hours debating vision, perception, and science. You don't agree on everything. In fact, you disagree on quite a lot. But you recognize that the young man possesses an unusually independent mind. When he leaves Weimar, he's determined to develop ideas that are entirely his own. Those ideas will soon capture the attention of one of the greatest composers in history. Chapter 5. The Philosopher Nobody Understood. Your conversations, or rather arguments, with Goethe leaves you with even more questions than answers. You respect the old writer, but you're convinced the world works differently than he believes. So you begin writing your own ideas, determined to explain what really drives human beings. In 1818, you publish The World as Will and Representation. You're certain people will recognize its brilliance. Instead, almost nobody notices. Imagine spending years trying to explain the meaning of life, only for the world to ignore it. To make matters worse, another philosopher named Hegel is drawing enormous crowds. You even schedule university lectures at the exact same time as his, convinced students will naturally choose you instead. They don't. Your lecture room sits nearly empty, while Hegel's overflows with eager listeners. That has to be one hell of a reality check. Years pass, and you leave university life behind and spend your days writing, walking, and refining your philosophy. Slowly, something unexpected happens. People begin discovering your books. The fame that never arrived in your youth finally appears in old age. Among your newest admirers is a young composer named Richard Wagner. He becomes fascinated by your ideas about desire, suffering, and the human condition. In 1854, he comes to Frankfurt to meet you in person. The conversation lasts only a short time, but its impact echoes through every opera Wagner writes afterward. Chapter 6. The Composer Who Changed Opera. Meeting Arthur Schopenhauer changes the way you think about music forever. His philosophy convinces you that opera can do more than entertain. It can explore humanity itself. You throw yourself into enormous productions filled with heroes, gods, dragons, cursed rings, and orchestras so large they practically become characters of their own. Your operas aren't exactly short either. We can safely say nobody accidentally watches a Richard Wagner performance on their lunch break. As your reputation grows, artists and intellectuals travel across Germany hoping to meet you. One visitor stands out immediately. He's brilliant, intensely curious, and still in his 20s. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. The two of you become close friends almost immediately. You spend long evenings discussing philosophy, music, and the future of German culture. Nietzsche admires you so deeply that he writes an entire book praising your genius. For a while, it seems you found someone who understands exactly what you're trying to create. But admiration has a funny habit of turning into disagreement. The older Nietzsche becomes, the more he begins questioning everything, including you. Your friendship slowly falls apart, but by then, the next chapter has already begun. Chapter 7. The Man Who Questioned Everything. Leaving Wagner behind isn't easy. For years, you believed he'd help reshape civilization. Now, you're convinced even your greatest hero deserves to be challenged. Free from his influence, your writing becomes bolder than ever. You question morality, religion, tradition, and nearly every belief society takes for granted. Some readers think you're a genius. Others are convinced you've completely lost your mind. Either way, nobody ignores your work. Then, in 1882, while visiting Rome, you're introduced to a remarkable young writer named Lou Andreas Salome. From the very first conversation, you're captivated by her intelligence. The two of you spend days discussing philosophy, literature, and the future of ideas. You finally met someone who can match you thought for thought. You quickly become convinced she's the person you want to spend your life with. So you ask her to marry you. She says no. You ask again, and she still says no. Love can be surprisingly brutal sometimes. Although your paths eventually separate, your meeting leaves a lasting mark on both of your lives. Chapter 8. The Woman Who Refused Expectations. Your conversations with Nietzsche make one thing perfectly clear. The greatest thinkers in Europe are asking fascinating questions, but none of them have all the answers. So you continue searching for your own. You write books, study philosophy, and build a reputation as one of Europe's sharpest intellectuals. Instead of chasing fame, you chase ideas. That decision leads you towards an entirely new field that's just beginning to emerge: psychology. One man is attracting enormous attention for his controversial theories about dreams and the unconscious mind. His name is Sigmund Freud. You travel to Vienna to meet him, and the two of you quickly develop enormous respect for one another. Your discussions stretch across years as you exchange ideas about memory, childhood, dreams, and the hidden parts of the human mind. Freud soon realizes you aren't simply a student. You're one of the few people willing to challenge him while still helping refine his thinking. Together, your conversations help shape the early development of psychoanalysis. Eventually, another remarkable thinker begins attracting Freud's attention. This time, the questions aren't about the human mind, they're about the universe itself. Chapter 9. The Man Fascinated by the Mind. Your years of conversation with Salome sharpen your ideas and strengthen your confidence. By now, your theories have spread across Europe. Some scientists admire your work. Others think you've wandered far beyond respectable medicine. You're used to disagreements, though. If anything, criticism usually inspires another book. Meanwhile, newspapers can't stop talking about a physicist whose discoveries are transforming science. His name is Albert Einstein. At first, your fields seem worlds apart. You study the mind, and he studies space, time, and gravity. Yet, both of you are searching for hidden truths that most people can't even see. You begin exchanging letters, fascinated by one another's ideas. Eventually, the two of you meet in person. Your conversations drift from science to philosophy, and finally to one of humanity's oldest questions: why do nations keep going to war? In 1932, the two of you publish your famous exchange, Why War? One of history's greatest psychologists and one of history's greatest physicists trying to understand whether humanity can ever escape violence. Chapter 10. the physicist who bends reality. By the time you meet Sigmund Freud, you've already turned the world of physics into your playground. People everywhere are talking about your theories, while newspapers seem almost as fascinated by your wild hair as they are by your equations. Freud wants to understand the human mind. You want to understand the universe itself. Strangely enough, the two of you get along remarkably well. Your conversations soon move beyond science. Instead of talking only about physics or psychology, you begin discussing something far older than either subject: war. Europe is becoming increasingly unstable, and both of you wonder the same thing. Can humanity ever stop destroying itself? In 1932, the two of you exchange a series of letters that become Why War? You ask whether there is any way to free humanity from the cycle of violence. Freud answers from the perspective of the human mind, while you approach the problem as someone who has watched science reshape the modern world. Neither of you finds an easy solution. Some problems, it turns out, are much harder than solving equations. Only a few years later, your fears begin coming true. Germany falls under Nazi rule, forcing you to leave the country you once called home. You settle in the United States, where you continue your research at Princeton. Then, during the Second World War, your name becomes connected to another world-changing moment. You sign a letter warning President Franklin Roosevelt that Nazi Germany might be developing an atomic bomb. That warning helps launch the research that eventually becomes the Manhattan Project. Ironically, you never work on the bomb itself. Still, your famous equation, E equals mc squared, forever becomes linked to the atomic age. After the war, you spend much of your remaining life speaking in favor of peace and international cooperation. The same man who helped warn the world about nuclear weapons now spends years urging humanity to avoid using them again. You continue exploring the mysteries of the universe until your death in 1955. Even today, your name remains almost synonymous with genius, proving that curiosity can leave a mark on history long after the questions themselves are first asked.